بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. The chairman of today's occasion, Alhaji Fola Adiola MNI, His Highness Khalifa Muhammad Sanusi II, the 14th Emir of Kano Emirate, the representative of the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the representative of the Governor of Lagos State and that of the Deputy Governor as well. I have two hosts here, and I don't know how to describe each and every one of them here. But I think in as far as we remain in this auditorium, we can only have one chief host, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos, Professor Toyin Ogundipe. You are most welcome, sir. And now to the chief host of today's program, the National Amir of the Companion, Engineer Olamileka. And I want to beg your pardon to please adopt all other existing protocols. I really appreciate the stand of the chairman by ordering that I should be given all the time that I would need to deliver my paper. But I don't want to abuse that privilege. So please allow me to stand or sit on the existing protocols. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, I say unto you all, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Since the lecture is being projected, you can remove this laptop. I don't need it. You can remove this one. It's being projected. No, somebody should be doing that. Today's lecture couldn't have come at a better time. This year, as we might all know, marks 10 years of uninterrupted operation of Islamic banking in Nigeria, 2012 to 2022. And you will agree with me that an experiment that has lasted for 10 years is no doubt ripe for assessment. Honest and sincere assessment. We want to look at where we are and also interrogate what we need to do to be where we should be in the global Islamic financial markets. And that is why I appreciate the companions, the organizers of today's program, for the hindsight, insight, and foresight that birthed today's topic. Islamic finance experiment in Nigeria, gains, challenges, and prospects. And to cap it all, today's occasion is a unique one. Sometimes you deliver a lecture to an audience that will be very detached from the topic of your discussion. But that is not the case. That is not the opportunity I have here today. I have the honor of having in our midst today who is who in the history and operation of Islamic finance in Nigeria. Are we to talk of His Highness Emir Sanusi, whose tenure as the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria witnessed the beginning of the true regulation of Islamic banking in this country? Or shall we talk of the chairman, who as the chairman, or let me put it in his own words, the follower of that wonderful woman the chairman of Lotus Capital. That was the first indigenous company that introduced an Islamic capital market product in our local markets. I think you called it then, sir, if I'm not mistaken, yes, Lotus Halal Equity ETF, which was introduced as far back as 2014. Your role in that capacity shall remain indelible forever, and that of the wonderful woman, who is not just a sister to His Highness, is also a sister to myself. We meet on several occasions, especially when it is time to issue any sukuk. She's always there with us. The governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, and I want to say this with every sense of responsibility, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, has nurtured the industry from where it was left by the emir. And that is why, as we shall see in the course of my presentation today, that this industry continues to grow and wax stronger and stronger. I believe without your support, we can never be where we are today. And I'm taking this opportunity to say thank you. I will run through my slides so that you will be able to follow with me the story I have come here to tell about Islamic finance in Nigeria. I will talk about the gains, speak about, okay, very good. This is the outline of my presentation, as can be seen clearly on the screen. Thank you very much, the operator. So you will bear with me. As soon as you see me moving from a slide to another, you also please kindly move with me so that we can save time. So this is the outline of my presentation as you have seen it. I'm going to start on an ethical note by giving the necessary acknowledgements. You can go there, please. On an ethical note, as I said, because as a researcher and a university professor, I know that a topic like this, you have to combine both the doctrinal and empirical methodologies of research, wherein you have to go into the field to get your data for the presentation. And I must acknowledge all my respondents, without whom it will be impossible for me to stand here and talk and tell the story that I have for you. So please, I acknowledge all of you. They cut across all strata of engagement, regulators, the CEOs, board of directors, members, management staff, Sharia advisors, compliance officers, and so many others in the Islamic finance industry. In addition, some corporate entities offered very useful information. And I want to see this opportunity to specifically thank and mention two of them, Mabu Capital Limited and Trust Bank Arthur Limited. I thank you all for making my job easier this morning. Preliminary reflections. Islamic finance experiment in Nigeria is just one out of similar experiences in more than 80 countries in different parts of the world. In Europe, I had the master of ceremony or the Amir saying 70. That's an outdated piece of information. We have Islamic finance today in more than 80 countries of the world. In Europe, in Asia, in the Americas, and of course in our beloved continent Africa, and in so many other places. Perhaps the most astonishing development I came across personally is a publication by the United Kingdom's Embassy in Kyrgyzstan titled Islamic Finance in the UK. Imagine United Kingdom, a predominantly Christian country, going all the way to Kyrgyzstan. That's a country of more than 90% Muslim population. The UK going all the way to Kyrgyzstan to market, promote, and develop Islamic finance. Not only that, the UK up till today prides itself as being a leading voice in the development of Islamic finance, and that its capital, London, is the largest center of Islamic finance outside the Muslim world. Also, in 2014, the United Kingdom government became the first Western government to issue a sovereign sukuk, which was 11 times oversubscribed. I hope you understand the implication of that. They came to the market asking for, let's say, £1 billion, and they ended up having close to £12 billion. Oversubscription of more than 11 times. And this happened 3 years, even before our own experience. The Nigerian debut in the sovereign sukuk market was in 2017. So UK preceded us in that light, in that way. This is one of the list is that of some of the projects that were developed in the United Kingdom using sukuk proceeds. They include Battersea Power Station regeneration, the London Gateway, the Olympic Village, the redevelopment of Chelsea Barracks, and thousands of homes in the Northwest, the Midlands, and several other parts of the United Kingdom. To close my preliminary reflections, I say, what lesson is there for us as Nigerians to learn from all this? It's very obvious. The lesson is very clear. Islamic finance is full of gains and opportunities, and we must never allow our religious divide or bias to deprive this nation of those gains and opportunities. Now to the conceptual clarifications. I need to clarify some concept that may be strange before I move on into the gist of my presentation. Here, my plan originally was to speak about what Islamic finance is, then move to what Islamic finance is not. But I'm skipping the first one. You can go to the next slide. As I said, I have a unique audience today. I don't need to be telling an audience that has His Highness Emir Sanusi and Alhaji Fola Adiola and the Governor of Central Bank. I should not be telling that an audience what Islamic finance is. I would rather go to what Islamic finance is not. Because some people up till today, either ignorantly, erroneously, or mischievously, claiming that Islamic finance is something or something that it is not. The first one is the claim of Islamization. Islamic finance is not about Islamizing anybody, and it has never happened anywhere in the world. As said above, Britain is a global player in the Islamic financial space, and yet, up till today, remains a Christian majority state, majority country. Same is also true with many other Western or Eastern countries. I can name some of them: United States of America, Canada, China, Japan, Hong Kong, and the list continues. They all remain Christian majority countries, and they have practiced Islamic finance for more than a decade. Interestingly, back on the continent of Africa, South Africa, with just about 3% Muslim population, gave us in Nigeria, at least we are above 50% in Nigeria, but it was South Africa with just 3% Muslim population that did that honor and favor to us by giving us the first ever regulated Islamic bank in Nigeria, and that was Stanbic IBTC window as it then was. The head of Islamic finance in the World Bank today is a Nigerian, is a Yoruba man, but is a Christian. Abayomi Alawode, up till today, is the head of Islamic finance in the World Bank. I wonder if Islamic finance is about Islamization, what he will be doing in that particular office. And he has been there for years. Not only that, I have a personal experience. I've seen people in the Central Bank of Nigeria who have great passion and interest for Islamic finance, and they are non-Muslims. I want to mention one of them that we fondly call, Aja Adiola knows him, we fondly call him in our meeting, Shaykh Okosu. Napoleon Okosu is from Bayelsa State and has achieved today a milestone that many Muslims have not achieved in Islamic finance industry. He is today, Okosu. Imagine, I didn't know you were here, honestly. This is Shaykh Okosu. That is how we call him in all our meetings, because of the passion, the interest that he exhibits always. Today, let me tell you a secret. He's a certified Islamic professional accountant, SIPA, certified in Bahrain, in the Gulf state. That's a milestone that many Muslim accountants have not achieved up till today. He struggled to get it and he got it. That is also to further buttress my point that it is erroneous, it is mischievous to claim that Islamic finance or Islamic banking is a ploy to Islamize a nation or individuals. It's not true. Number two, Islamic finance is not a charity foundation. It's not a Zakah and Sadaqah foundation. That's another erroneous understanding about Islamic finance, about Islamic bank. People come to an Islamic bank thinking that it will just give them money and get nothing in return. Please, so this lecture, part of the purposes, part of the aims and objectives of my lecture today is to correct that wrong impression. Islamic finance, Islamic bank, or any institution for that matter, is a business entity that is housed to generate profit. All what matters is that that profit must be 100% halal. But Islamic finance is not I beg your pardon, is not a Zakah or Sadaqah foundation. And that is why by using different Sharia compliant products, an Islamic financial institution generates returns either from sale-based products, lease-based products, or even equity-based financial products. We don't have time to go through all that in a gathering like this. The next stage of my presentation is to look at the stages of development. How did we start in Nigeria? I've classified the stages of development of Islamic finance in Nigeria into three. We have a stage that I called evolution stage, then crystallization stage, then standardization stage, and that is what was brought on board by His Highness Sanusi, as I said earlier on. The evolution stage began in 1956. A lot of people do not know this. Muslim Bank West African Limited was incorporated here in Lagos in 1956. Unfortunately, its license of operation for political reasons was revoked in 1968. The fact that the bank was involved, as a lawyer, I read through some cases in which this particular bank was involved as a party. The fact that the bank was involved in a court case with a brewery, that is Nigerian Breweries Limited, and Muslim Bank West African, that is the suit number because it's an unreported case. What I want to say here is that this alone leaves much to be decided as to whether or not the mission and vision of an Islamic bank were adequately conceptualized by the operators of this bank. But nevertheless, it was a remarkable, a laudable, and commendable attempt that even preceded, for the course of history, it preceded what is being referred to in our literature today as the first experiment of Islamic banking in the world. Usually, they will mention that of Egypt, and that of Malaysia, Tabung Anj, both happened in 1963. We here in Nigeria, we had a bank incorporated and operated since 1956. But unfortunately, we don't tell our stories. And that is the unfortunate thing. In all the literature that I teach today, my students, what we have there is that the first experiment dated back to 1963. Of course, I think we have to work on that. The second stage is crystallization stage. And that one was in 1998. The idea became more crystallized, more understood in 1998. And that was when Habib Nigeria Bank is no more in existence. But you all remember Habib Nigeria Bank was granted a license to operate a non-interest window alongside its conventional operation. Habib Nigeria Bank is a special story with me because my LLM thesis, I chose Habib Nigerian Bank as a case study. Although in a foreign university, but I decided to come back home to get my data and make that bank my case study. I was studying the contract of Islamic law used in banking and financial operations. Unfortunately, why I call it a crystallization stage, not standardized, this is the fact, this is the reason. Unfortunately, the bank was licensed without any regulatory framework to supervise its products and services and ensure their Sharia compliance. There was nothing, practically. As I told you, it was my area of study as far back as when I was doing my LLM. So that was the only unfortunate thing about that stage is that they licensed banks, a bank, but without any regulatory framework. It's only the bank itself that would determine and decide and finally that what I'm doing is Sharia compliant. You can see the difference now. Now comes the standardization stage. In late 2010 and early 2011, the Central Bank of Nigeria issued the first set of guidelines for the regulation and supervision of institutions offering non-interest financial services. And this can be said to be the most important turning point in the stages of Islamic finance development in Nigeria, as it marked the beginning of subjecting Islamic finance, particularly banking, to the Sharia governance process and procedures, which was hitherto missing in our local experiment. That was in 2011, but very quickly, other regulators in the financial industry also followed suit. I'll give an example here. The National Insurance Commission quickly in 2012 also issued its operational guidelines for takaful. Takaful is the word for Islamic insurance. Anytime I mention takaful, that is Islamic insurance. So NICOM issued its operational guidelines for takaful insurance operators in 2012. And that is where I will stop as far as stages of development of Islamic finance is concerned. So now move to the gist of my presentation. What are the gains? What are the challenges? And what are the prospects of Islamic finance in Nigeria? Gains of Islamic finance in Nigeria. I begin by asking a question. Are there gains from the Islamic finance experiment in Nigeria? The answer from any objective observer to this question should be in the affirmative. And we can use the following agents, the economic agent, as our parameters to x-ray some of these gains. I'm going to use those three economic agents to measure, to see whether or not there are gains from Islamic finance experiment in Nigeria. Number one, Islamic finance gains for household and individuals in Nigeria. How has it been? Islamic finance has deepened the financial system by providing alternative investment and financing outlets to many Nigerians, to many individuals in Nigeria today. And this is clearly evidenced by the growing demand for an ever-increasing customer base of Islamic financial services. It continues to grow day by day. Don't forget, I told you we had only one in 2012, and that was Jaiz Bank PLC. But today, in 2022, we have 4 licensed, full-fledged non-interest banks in Nigeria. We have a window of a conventional bank. It was mentioned a short while ago, that Sterling Bank window. And the good news is that Sterling Bank window is going to become a standalone subsidiary, full-fledged, very soon. It has been licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria. It means the industry is growing. If not, you cannot move from being a window and wanting to become a full-fledged institution. So we have 4 plus a window that will soon transform into a subsidiary. In the insurance sector, we now have 4 full-fledged takaful operators, 4 full-fledged Islamic insurance operators in Nigeria today, licensed by NICOM, and only 1 window takaful operator. And I need to tell another story here. We need to be fair to people. NICOM, I'm also an advisor and a consultant to NICOM on Islamic insurance. NICOM decided a few years ago to phase out window operation. That if you want to operate as an Islamic insurance company, you get your license for that. Not having a conventional insurance and just opening a window. But in its wisdom, in the wisdom of the management, they decided to leave this only one as a window up till today. Do you know why? Because it was this conventional insurance company, African Alliance, that brought Islamic insurance into Nigeria. We have to be fair to people. And that was spearheaded by a non-Muslim. The CEO of African Alliance then, he has retired. I learned he has retired. I've met him on so many occasions where people would normally describe him as the father of takaful in Nigeria. Some of you may know him. His name is Mr. Okpe Oreduba. Is that correct? Mr. Okpe Oreduba. He was the one who brought this, the idea. He said, I saw it outside Nigeria working. And I said, how can it not work in my own country? And yet, he is also not even a Muslim. So I'm just telling you the way the industry has been growing. We have 4 full-fledged takaful operators, and we have 1 window, and we hope this one will further encourage whoever is in charge today of African Alliance to also come quickly and get a full-fledged license for their operations. In the capital market, today we have full-fledged. It was Lotus Bank alone in 2014, as you have heard that. But I'm happy to tell you today that Lotus Bank has had many followers, not just the chairman only following the wonderful man. So it has so many followers today. As I'm speaking with you, we have 5 full-fledged capital market players, purely, strictly Islamic capital market players, including the Lotus Bank. Then we have at least 8 conventional capital market players with 1 or more Islamic capital market products. Multiple sukuk issuances. Sukuk has been issued many times in Nigeria. We have had sovereign sukuk 4 times now. We had 1 subnational or sovereign sukuk. That was the sukuk of Osun State. And we are having many. I will tell you new sukuk that are coming on board now to show you that industry is actually growing because there are gains and opportunity inherent. These sukuk run into hundreds of billions of naira issued between 2013 and 2021. Not only that, when we move to the pension commission, National Pension Commission, recently introduced and created a new layer of the multi-fund structure that it introduced back in 2018. We now have what it calls Fund 6. Fund 6 is what allows you and me or any interested person to have his or her pension strictly invested in non-interest Sharia compliant businesses. It's possible today. And the good news also is that moving from any of the previous funds, Fund 1, Fund 2, Fund 3, if you so wish, to Fund 6 is absolutely free. It attracts no fee. If your PFA tells you you must pay, report it to the National Pension Commission. It's absolutely free. You are free as a Nigerian to choose that this is what I want my pension to be. Now we move to the Islamic finance gains for corporate entities. That is the second economic agent I'm using. Companies that are either owned or led by faith-conscious individuals. I'm using this word advisedly. It's not all about we or all about us Muslims. Riba or interest is equally prohibited in the Bible. We have verses in the Leviticus, in the Exodus, in the Deuteronomy, and in Psalm, all prohibiting taking or giving interest. So we have so many of them, I've mentioned some of them now, that lead companies and sought and got funds in a way that will be riba-free, that will be interest-free. Also, Islamic finance companies are involved in the businesses of these corporate entities with a view to managing risks and get returns from transactions under profit-sharing and loss-bearing principle. Even corporates whose transactions are not viable, they also enjoy technical advice from the Islamic banks, while mitigants are put in place to manage calculated risks, and in extreme cases, alternatives are provided. Still on the Islamic finance gains for corporate entities in Nigeria, Islamic finance has introduced a number of innovative best practices into the banking and financial industry in Nigeria, and I will mention some. Nigerians have never heard of anything called surplus in insurance. It's only when Takaful started operating in Nigeria that we started hearing about something called surplus. The way an Islamic insurance company operates, it operates like an agent of the participant. They employ it, they engage it to do business on their behalf and get paid. It has that option of either getting upfront through wakala or waiting until when profit is generated and have a share of profit through what we call mudaraba. But the beauty of it is that at the end of the day, after all claims have been settled, if anything is left behind, that is what they call underwriting surpluses. They don't go to the company. They go back to who? They go back to the policy holders. They are the owners of their funds. And that is what is happening in the industry today. To date, Nur Takaful, that is one of those licensed Takaful operators, has distributed surplus worth 64 million naira in the last 3 years. And just in 2020, Jaiz Takaful alone declared 84 million naira surplus in the 2020 financial year alone. Another innovative best practice introduced by Islamic finance into the financial space, banking space in Nigeria. The non-interest financial institutions were the first to abolish the COT regime. I think we all remember the monster called COT, or have you forgotten? Because you are no more paying it. There was a monster in the banking sector called COT, that when you have your money in a current account, and each time you come to retrieve it, they will also penalize you. They started by charging, I think it was 5 naira per 1,000, then 3. You've forgotten. That is part of what Islamic finance brought into play. I remember vividly it was in 2013 when we were inaugurated by His Highness as first members. The first ever meeting that we held, of course I think you were there. It was in that meeting that we decided that this amounts to injustice and can never be Sharia compliant. And from day one, non-interest financial institutions were never allowed to charge COT. Because it's very simple. We looked at the transaction. We look at the legal relationship between parties. In a current account, the relationship that exists between you is that of a creditor-debtor relationship. You are the creditor of the bank. The bank is your debtor. How come will the debtor now penalize its creditor for coming back to retrieve its legitimate money for whatever reason. And that is why we took that decision, and we were fully supported by the management. And some few years later, we realized that even conventional banks also followed suit. So that is part of the gains of Islamic finance to the corporate world in Nigeria. And the third and final parameter I'm using for measuring the gains of Islamic finance in Nigeria is the government. And please, when I talk about the government, am I not talking about myself and you? We are the government. Government is about the people. So I'm now talking about the gains the government has derived, Nigerian government has derived, for our benefit, for benefits of Nigerians. Islamic finance has helped government at all levels in achieving its developmental objectives and in bridging the infrastructure deficit gap. Proceeds of Sukuk issued since 2017 till date have had significant impact on road construction in the entire 6 geopolitical zones. Anywhere you go in the entire geopolitical zone, 6 geopolitical zones that we have, you must see something indicating that so road is being developed, rehabilitated, or constructed by Sukuk proceeds. According to the Ministry of Works and Housing records, Sukuk proceeds have or are being deployed for either the construction or rehabilitation of 97 key economic roads in different parts of this country, 97. I move to the next one. That's a statement by DMO, but you can read that one. This is, let's go to the next one because of our time. This is just some pictures of some of the roads. I know some of us or all of us might have seen one of these pictures in the past. So this is some of the roads, and the beauty of it is that it's not restricted to any part of this country. It's in the south, it's in the east, it's in the north, in every part of the country. Other Sukuk issuances, not just federal government Sukuk, other Sukuk issuances that have been or are being deployed for various developmental objectives of government at different levels are Osun Sukuk. I mentioned that one while some few minutes ago. So Osun Sukuk was used to develop state-of-the-art schools in Osogbo and other industry. It's not only Osun State now. Katsina State has come on board. Katsina has issued a 55 billion naira Sukuk, and look at how it is being deployed. That is the percentage. The percentage is not showing there. Why? Okay, let me read it from my own copy here. Road infrastructure will take 38%. Water infrastructure is taking 24%. Investment in health is taking 2.73%. That's an innovative step recently taken by the Katsina State government. The next slide. Okay, this is what I was talking of. Schools in Osun, pictures of schools in Osun State built with Sukuk proceeds. The next slide. It's not only Osun and Katsina. Gombe is also on board. Gombe State recently, just a few months back, also issued a 35 billion naira Sukuk for infrastructure development. And you can see how it is being distributed to cover all facets of life in that state. They are using 21.43 to develop Muhammadu Buhari Industrial Park, 22.86 for Gombe Capital Special Development Project, 7.14 for special schools, 11.43 for Gombe Residual Water Project, 5.71 for Gombe Regional Roads, 17.14 for Gombe Township Roads, 5.71% for installation of solar street lights, and 2.86% for what they call GOGIS, phase 2, I don't know that. 2.86% for rural electrification. You know, it cuts across all facets of life. And lastly, 2.86% for Gombe State University Duku campus. That's what is being done presently in another state called Gombe State. We are still on the gains of Islamic finance for government in Nigeria. Another company, Family Homes Sukuk, introduced the first ever corporate sukuk. You know, in sukuk we have sovereign sukuk, we have subnational sukuk. We have had that so far in 2014, in 2017, 18, 19, 20. But we've been clamoring to have a corporate sukuk, and we only succeeded in having that one in 2021. This company, family-owned sukuk, issued its own sukuk, and is to be used to construct 40,000 housing units in all parts of the Federation. Another one is Purple Urban Sukuk. That one is for Lagosians for developing 94 housing units here in Lekki, Lagos. Another one is Brains and Hammer Sukuk. It's been deployed to develop 4,500 units, Bungalow City, in the Federal Capital Territory. And finally, 1 watt solar sukuk for corporate green sukuk for off-grid renewable energy. So these are all new issuances of sukuk that have just come on board. Still on the, there are so many gains, particularly for the government. And when we talk of government, I said, we are talking of people of Nigeria. Look at this one. A total of 29, what's happening? Chairman, can I continue? Okay. A total of 29,500 Nigerians, 46% female and 54% male, have benefited so far from the federal government of Nigeria non-interest developmental financing disbursed through the Nigerian incentive-based risk-sharing system for agricultural lending, popularly known as NIRSAL, in the last 6 months. Just in the last 6 months, my data showed between August 2021 and January 2022, a total of 29,500 Nigeria have benefited from this non-interest Sharia-compliant intervention. Another gain of Islamic finance for government of Nigeria, Islamic finance has opened the Nigerian economy to multilateral organizations, investment and collaboration. And I am a living witness to that. Okosu is another living witness to that. In fact, we have many Nigerian banks, including conventional banks, that are even benefiting from this advantage. That international organizations like Islamic Development Bank are willing to come to invest fund with a condition that even if you are a conventional bank, you must abide by the underlying Sharia contract. We give you our money and it must be used in line with what Sharia dictates. And a lot of them have been taking it. So it's part of the gains of Islamic finance in Nigeria. Islamic finance has improved financial inclusion in Nigeria with its attendant economic benefit for the nation. Production and export have been increased by the credit facilities granted by Islamic banks and other institutions, which has in turn impacted positively on the country's GDP. Still on the gains for government of Nigeria from Islamic finance, employment generation, this is a fact, verifiable fact. Islamic finance has generated thousands of direct and indirect jobs created in the last 10 years across various sectors of the Islamic finance industry. Similarly, income tax paid by this large number of employees as well as their employers are also generating revenue for the government of this nation. And lastly, this may look strange, but is another fact that we cannot run away from. Islamic finance has contributed to interfaith harmony. Did you hear that? And peaceful coexistence. Forget about all noises elsewhere. What we know, those of us in the industry, we know that many of the Nigerian Islamic financial institutions, customers, staff, management, and even board members are non-Muslims. So in that way, Islamic finance is even contributing to our interfaith harmony and peaceful coexistence. Now to the challenges. I know we must be happy to listen to all these gains and opportunities, but I'm not here just to tell you about the gains. I'm here for an assessment of the progress so far. What are the challenges of Islamic finance in Nigeria? Challenges. Number one challenge. Please project it. It's important. The market share of Islamic finance industry compared to the conventional market is still abysmally low. And I think that should attract special attention of the chairman. Despite all what you have achieved, if you look at the share, the market share, let me give you some statistics. A single bank, an Islamic bank in Saudi Arabia called Alaro Bank, has a total asset of more than 100 billion US dollars. Just one bank. In the United Arab Emirates, Dubai Islamic Bank, another one single Islamic bank, has a total asset of more than 75 billion US dollars. I checked some few hours ago, the highest capitalized Nigerian bank, conventional and non-conventional, is about $26 billion. But the irony of it is that when Islamic banks have this huge asset outside Nigeria, it's very, very unfortunate that all the asset of Islamic banks in Nigeria, the 5 of them put together, is less than 1 billion US dollar. That is a challenge. And this figure represents less than 1% of the total asset of the conventional banks in Nigeria. We need to work on that. The industry has shown that it is viable, it is sustainable, it is profitable. So I don't know what the doubting Thomases are still waiting for. This is the time to act. That is challenge number 1. This challenge has hindered the non-interest banks in Nigeria from penetrating large markets and financing big ticket transactions due to inadequate capital. They can't. When they have big projects coming to them, they cannot, because they have inadequate capital under their control. The story is not different in the insurance sector, as the latest figures from the regulator show that the total capitalization of takaful companies in Nigeria is only 0.5% of the conventional insurance capitalization. Just 0.5%. Is the story different in the capital market? The answer is no. Even at the capital market, a study conducted in 2020 revealed that the sukuk share of the total debt market in Nigeria as of then was just 0.69%. I'm going to come to offer my recommendation, but this is a very significant challenge that Islamic finance is facing in the country. Challenge number 2. Lack of adequate liquidity management instrument in the Nigerian market. As we have seen in the previous slides, the market share of sukuk is still very low, and it's not even as frequent as the conventional debt issuances. We normally hear of sukuk issuance once in a year. In fact, because of the COVID restrictions, the last one took about 2 years. Because we had in 2017, we had in 2018, we didn't have any in 2019. It was in 2020 and 2021 that we had the 3rd and 4th. So it's an issue, it's a challenge. It's not frequent, and the share is still very, very low. There is virtually, we talk about the long-term liquidity management. What about the short-term market, money market instrument that's about short times? These are actually not available. There is virtually no short-term interbank money market instrument for use by NIPIs. But here, we must commend the effort of one organization, and I forgot to mention that as part of the gains. We have today an association called Nigerian Islamic Financial Institutions Association of Nigeria, NIFIAN. Thank you, Okosu. NIFIAN, you will recollect, NIFIAN has proposed now 2 instruments for liquidity management, interbank short-term liquidity management. And I'm sure by the time they are through with Okosu and his team, they will have it in the market. But that also remains a challenge. There is no sufficient liquidity management instrument. And for any banker, anybody that is familiar with this industry, Managing your liquidity is very, very essential. Challenge number 3, dearth of innovative but yet Sharia-compliant products in the market. The banking and financial world is highly dynamic and requires constant innovation and creativity. You don't just continue to use one structure, one product for years. This is a very dynamic industry. For example, more than 90% of sukuk issuances in Nigeria up till today are using just one single structure, ijara structure, ijara structure, ijara structure. Where are other structures? Mudaraba structure, istisna structure, murabaha structures, wakala structure. So we need innovation in this area also. I'm trying to be just. I'm aware that a bank in Nigeria, will never mention the name, but an Islamic bank in Nigeria is actually coming up to face this challenge headlong. A bank in Nigeria has introduced AT1 capital using Mudaraba as a structure. And I think they will be soon have it in the market. We hope so. But we need more. We need more. Challenge number 4, dearth of skilled human capital resources. And this is a major challenge too. Majority of those we have, with apologies and with due respect to all of them, majority of those we have in the industry today are from conventional banks. And unfortunately, a significant number of them continue to have inclination and penchant for riba-based transactions. And sometimes they create confusion to the shareholders and depositors regarding the real difference between the two systems. You find yourself sometimes before a banker, supposed Islamic banker, not being able to explain to you why you must make that choice. All he has to say is to tell you our rate is higher, our rate is lower. Is that the reason why I'm here? So we need to have more competent, trained, and qualified practitioners in this field. I'm also going to put forward a recommendation in that light. This should be number 5 industry, because I don't want to be biased. A lot of people may know me as a lawyer, as a lecturer, but I think my primary constituency you all know. And that is why when somebody said I speak Arabic and English, I heard a lot of you saying Yoruba, because primarily I'm an Islamic scholar. And that is why I will not complete these challenges without mentioning a challenge that we are facing from that circle, the Muslim scholars. Unfortunately, some of our respected scholars sometimes display total or partial ignorance of what exactly Islamic finance is or not, and thereby make pronouncements that are not evidence-based against the industry and its operations. Islam teaches us to respect specialization. The fact that you are a Muslim scholar doesn't make you an expert in Islamic finance. But unfortunately, sometimes you hear some people, some scholars, making very, very devastating pronouncements on the industry, and without any basis, without any justification. But here, I must say, the operators, the players, the non-interest financial institutions too. You are here, I can see a director here. Is that not Alhaji Amao? Director of Jais Bank. You people are not doing enough. I must tell you the truth. You are not doing enough to create awareness among the people. When people are misleading, when some are misleading people, you must be there to tell the true story of what Islamic finance is. But unfortunately, we are not seeing much from you people. And lastly, I will, so that I don't leave this podium and they will say, oh, he deliberately left his own constituencies. I'm going to my other constituency now, the legal constituency. We have a jurisdictional lacuna as a challenge for Islamic finance in Nigeria. There's no doubt, everybody knows this fact, that Sharia judges are the most competent to handle disputes emanating from Islamic financial transactions. But they cannot do that in Nigeria of today. because of the jurisdictional restriction embedded in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Our Sharia Court of Appeal, as a superior court of record, can only hear, adjudicate cases relating only to Islamic personal law, marriage, divorce, inheritance, and the rest of them. And unfortunately, those that have jurisdiction at the High Court, at the Federal High Court or State High Court, with due respect, they are our colleagues. Some of them are very senior colleagues, but they lack expertise in this field. And it's very obvious. We are recently, a judge failed to distinguish between riba, interest that is prohibited, and what is allowed today all over the world as a best global practice of charge of levying on a defaulting customer, any customer that wants to deliberately bring an Islamic bank down by taking its money and not ready to pay. The global best practice is to have that bank putting on such a customer what we call penalty, but the bank must never benefit from it. It must be channeled to charitable causes. But recently, unfortunately, a judge said this is a riba and ruled against the bank. So this is what we are saying. It's a major lacuna that you must have a solution to. As suggested last year in my inaugural lecture, the CBN governor is ably represented here, sir. I suggested in my inaugural lecture, Alaro 2021, that in the interim, a special tribunal for resolution of Islamic banking related dispute should be constituted by the Central Bank of Nigeria. It's a very cumbersome process to get amendment of constitution, of provisions of the constitution. I know that. But that is not the end of the road. When we have precedent in other financial sectors, I will give you those precedents. We have in the capital market what they call investment and securities tribunal. We have in the tax industry what they call tax appeal tribunal. Here they said because we recognize specialized knowledge of the subject matter. We know it's not a matter that any judge can just take up. And that is why they are creating those tribunals. I think it is high time for CBN to also look at that direction and have a special tribunal pending the time that we will have this jurisdictional, constitutional lacuna removed from our constitution. May God help us. So that is the end of the challenges. I didn't want to mention more, so I don't frighten people. No, these challenges are too much. But I think with these 5, these are the key challenges that I know exist in the industry. Now to the last and final leg of my presentation. The gains are over, the challenges are over, and we are now at the prospect. Prospects of Islamic finance in Nigeria. The following factors, in my view, will have appreciable impact on the future of Islamic finance in Nigeria. 1, the Nigerian Islamic finance industry needs to define clearly its pattern of operation. In the world today, in practice, we have 2 patterns, and we know as experts, as players in the industry. We have what we call market-driven pattern, and we have what we call Sharia-driven pattern. Market-driven pattern is being championed by Malaysia, while Sharia-driven pattern is being championed by the Gulf state. They are all practicing Islamic banking, but in Malaysia they are very liberal. They are very, very liberal. Mostly they go after the conventional product and try to mimic, to copy that product, and perhaps introduce some cosmetic or superficial changes to make the product Sharia compliant. The Sharia one is very rigid. It must be deeply rooted in Sharia compliance. Nigeria needs to, from what I'm seeing today, we didn't have our own pattern that you can say this is the pattern we are following in Nigeria. And from my little knowledge of our environment, of our peculiarities, of our specificities, I will never I will never suggest that we go the Malaysian way 100%. Here in Nigeria, people will not be satisfied. I know our people. Even when you tell them there is certificate from phrase, there is Sharia compliance certificate from ACE, they will still go to their malams to say, please, malam, they say this thing is halal. Is it? That is how we are, and it's very good. So if you have a situation like this, you must be very careful. I would rather suggest a hybrid that will combine both market-driven and Sharia-driven approaches. And that is very important for the players in the industry to have that clear path that you want to follow as a nation. Number 2, we need to move aggressively, yes, towards a knowledge-driven economy through Islamic finance scholarship. We are not doing much in that area too. Capacity building with a view to bridging the knowledge and skill gap in the industry will ensure effective operation and supervision of Islamic finance in the country. This will also mean creation of congenial environment for the development of highly innovative but yet Sharia compliant products for the industry. Number 3 of the prospect, the drivers of the prospect of Islamic banking and finance in Nigeria. Development of other components of the Islamic finance value chain, particularly the zakat, waqf, microfinance, and other instruments of what we call Islamic social finance. This will bring the benefit of Islamic finance closer to the people in the grassroots and meet the financing expectations of the lower rung of the society and small-scale businesses, which are the economic catalyst in any clime. What I observe today is that the operators are always after those with huge amount of money to invest. And you must not be doing that alone. You must remember that Islamic finance is a value chain. It includes what we call Islamic social finance. Conclusion and recommendations. According to Robin Hood Smith, the British ambassador to Kyrgyzstan 2015 to 2019, he said, there are 2 driving forces behind the UK's embracing of Islamic finance. Number 1, the belief that financial inclusion is really important to help economies grow and to bring prosperity to individuals. And number 2, which is very, very germane, relevant to our situation, that people should not have to compromise their values when they do business. These are the 2 driving forces for the UK's embracing of Islamic finance up till today. In other words, no civilized nation would attempt to force its citizens to do businesses in a way that is injurious to their ethical preference or religious belief. Nigeria cannot and should not be an exception. That is my final thought. Are there gains from the Islamic finance experiment in Nigeria? Are there challenges facing Islamic finance in Nigeria? Answers to the above posers are in the affirmative. And an attempt has been made in this work to justify that. An attempt was also made to identify the key factors that are potential drivers of the prospect of Islamic finance in Nigeria in the years to come. What remains of my duty here today is to further profile specific recommendations as what I see as the best way forward. Recommendation number 1. The need for increased capital for Islamic finance industry in Nigeria cannot be overemphasized. We've seen the reason. Hence, appropriate measures should be taken to attract more investment into the sector, including government patronage where and when necessary. It is only natural that funds meant for religious activities, such as the annual Hajj, must be deposited exclusively with the non-interest financial institution. That is just natural. After all, these banks are by law and regulation barred, prevented from accessing funds meant for haram product and service. They cannot go there. It's a no-go area for them by law, by regulation. A brewery cannot come to them. They cannot finance alcohol. They cannot go for gambling, betting, pornography. So they are barred by law to go into certain areas. Why are conventional banks still competing with them in what should be their exclusive domain? I think it's something that is worth being looked at by our regulators. I will tell a story here. In one of the states in Nigeria, the branch manager of an Islamic bank told me, after a series of meetings, Government House, Ministry of Finance, the Hajj Pilgrims Board chairman, he couldn't even sit at his office. He was busy going to meeting. At the end of the day, what happened was that they said, you see, programs are going to pay in 2 tranches. We will give you 1 tranche, and we'll give so bank, conventional, the second tranche. And the implication? They were paying 1.2 million each program that year. They will first pay 200,000 to show commitment. And that is what an Islamic bank will get. And the second tranche of 1 million per program is what goes to the conventional bank. I think we are doing a big disservice to the industry if we continue this way. And here I must also recognize the effort of the National Hajj Commission in what it did recently by having its program called Hajj Savings Scheme. And I think that is being given only to a non-interest financial institution. It's a right step in the right direction. But we want government at all levels also to also follow suit. It's not by way of doing favor or giving undue opportunity or advantage to these banks. As I've told you, they are clearly barred and prohibited from going to some areas. So let's have what can be a niche area for them to grow and develop. Their development will mean better life for hundreds of millions, for tens of millions of Nigerians. Recommendation number 2. Regulators and operators of Islamic finance should support universities and academic centers to facilitate capacity building for the industry through endowment of professorial chairs, establishment of specialized academic department, and introduction of short and long-term professional programs in Islamic finance. That should be your contribution too. It happens in the Western world. In many universities in the UK, you have chairs of Islamic law and finance being sponsored by corporate bodies, being sponsored by government outside the UK. Why can't we have same thing from the capable and willing individuals or even corporate bodies in Nigeria? So I think we can also achieve that. Recommendation 3, Muslim scholars and preachers again, who are non-experts in the field, should please, I'm pleading, should please desist from making pronouncements or insinuations that are capable of eroding people's confidence in the operations of Islamic finance without any justifiable cause or basis. Recommendation 4, customers should not base their choice of either an Islamic or conventional bank exclusively on account of which of the two pays more return on investment or whose rate of lending or financing is lower. Haram remains haram, even if it is cheaper than halal. Recommendation 5. Non-interest financial institutions in Nigeria should invest heavily in fintech, as that is where the future of banking services lies. Recommendation 6. Central Bank of Nigeria should collaborate with National Judicial Institute on the imperative of training our judges on the intricacies of Islamic finance. And luckily, there is a precedent to follow here too. Just last month, February 2022, the Nigerian Copyright Commission reached an agreement with the same body, National Judicial Institute, that is in charge of training judges in Nigeria. It reached an agreement with JNI for training our judges in the intellectual property law. They are learned, but they need to always be abreast, be acquainted with new and current development in the field. If Nigerian Copyright Commission can do that, I don't see any reason why CBN, as a regulator of banks, can also not follow suit. Recommendation 7, I have 10, I'm almost done. Federal government of Nigeria and other stakeholders should explore other innovative structures of sukuk and make it more frequent and regular. More importantly, it is high time we started issuing dollar-denominated sukuk to attract foreign investment in this regard and take advantage of cross-border capital mobility. I tried to invite even some Nigerians in the diaspora to come and invest in sukuk. They didn't come. They couldn't come. If I were in their shoes, I wouldn't come. Sukuk is a long-term investment. You tie your money for 7 years, for 8 years, for 6 years, for 5 years. And we know the rate of inflation in our country. When you bring $1,000 to sukuk today, by the time they are paying you your dividend in the next 2, 3, 5 years, your $1,000 might have become $500. Who will come to invest in such an instance? It's impossible. It's only when we start having, and no foreigners will come. I've also attempted to invite some of my friends in Saudi Arabia that we have sukuk that you can invest in, because I know they do in some other countries. But they told me point blank, we can't come. Inflation rate in your country is very high, unless if you can have a dollar-denominated sukuk, that they will know when they bring $1,000, it remains $1,000. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Only 2 remaining. Recommendation 8, CBN to consider gradual phasing out of Windows operation of Islamic banks. This will boost investors' confidence in our local Islamic banking institutions. Recommendation 9 is very important. I hope they are represented here too. Securities and Exchange Commission should step up its oversight function in relation to the regulation of Islamic capital market products. The current situation where SEC does not bother to have a third-party independent confirmation of the Sharia compliance of Islamic capital market instrument is worrisome. And kudos in this respect to the Central Bank of Nigeria, the National Insurance Commission, and the National Pension Commission, who have bodies of experts that are certifying the Sharia compliance of product. What is happening in the capital market today is what was happening in the 1998 in the banking sector, that it's only the players that will determine finally whether their products are Sharia compliant or not. That is what is still playing out in the capital market sector. And finally, universities in Nigeria should consider introduction of programs and courses relevant to the development of human resources for the Islamic finance industry. And I give kudos here to Bayero University, Kano, as the only Nigerian university that I know that has today an MSc program in Islamic finance. I thank you for your attention. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I understand. I was looking at my red mic. Thank you. Now we understand why the chairman has asked that we all take time to listen, and if there's anything, a whole lot from start to finish, as sound bites that will help us. Haram remains haram even if it is cheaper than halal. Takbir! Allah. And of course, he's also said something about knowledge-driven, Sharia-driven. And he also said something about the banks. They should pursue this aggressively. It was only almost 2 weeks ago I found out some other things. But quickly here, join us as we welcome His Highness Muhammad Sanusi II, the 14th Emir of Kano and Grand Khalifa of the Tijaniya in Nigeria, to do his remark on this auspicious moment. Takbir! Allah!
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله سيدنا ونبينا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chancellor, the Chairman of Company. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As the chairman mentioned, I had volunteered to come in for a very short period and give my remarks. And then I agreed to listen to the lecture, which is always a dangerous thing when a professor is giving a lecture. And then the chairman added by saying he can take as long as he wants and nobody can ask him, and but having said that, I'm sure we all learned a lot and we have a lot to take away from us. So I thank Prof. Alaro for this wonderful presentation. I would like to begin by, I'm going to talk about two things that are not related to this topic before I go into my subject. First of all, given that we're meeting today and given this whole crowd of very pious people, I want to ask you all to help us pray that Arsenal wins today and that Manchester City also wins, so that by the end of today Arsenal is in the Champions League places. So this is my honorarium for sitting here for 3 hours on this very important day. Okay. Now the second thing is actually a matter of interest. I don't know if you all saw this paper that was distributed, the Al-Haq newspaper, just on the table. And I was just reading through, and on page 4 I saw this thing about forbidden friendship in Islam. It's extremely important for us when we see things if we need to speak at the time of speaking, because it is said, as-sukut fi mawqi'il haja rida. Silence at a point when there's a need to speak is acceptance. Now, on the face of it, this fatwa on forbidden friendship in Islam is not wrong. On the face of it, you've got verses of the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tattakhidhul yahuda wan nasara awliya, la tajidu qawman yu'minuna billahi wal yawmil akhir, yu'aduna man hadda Allah wa rasulahu, and so on. The problem is that it is based on a selective reading of the Quran. And anyone who reads this and give your children this to read, they will go with the impression that Allah says you cannot have Christian friends or non-Muslim friends, and that the relationship between you and non-Muslims is one of enmity. This issue of wala and bara is very dangerous. Because the same Quran says, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تولوهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين إنما ينهاكم الله عن الذين قاتلوكم في الدين وأخرجوكم من دياركم وظاهروا على إخراجكم أن تولوهم ومن يتولهم منكم فأولئك هم الظالمون. Allah does not prohibit you from those who have not waged war against you on account of your faith, and who have not expelled you from your homes, and tabarruhum wa tuqsitu ilayhim, that you treat them kindly, and that you do justice to them, because Allah loves those who are just. Allah only prohibits you from those who wage war against you on account of your faith, who expel you from your homes, or assist in expelling you from your homes, that you should be friends with them, and he who is friends with them is one of those who commit injustice. I felt I had to make this comment, because we see this all the time. People come up with a verse of the Quran and a hadith of the Prophet, and because we see it is a verse of Quran and hadith, we take it as religion. And we've not looked at the entire picture, we've not looked at the context, we've not looked at other verses, we've not looked at the jurisprudence. Please, there is nothing in the Quran that stops a Muslim from having excellent relations with good Muslims who do not fight you on account of your faith. I don't know if there's any other thing in this paper. I don't know who published this paper, and I apologize if I've offended anyone, but I cannot read this and know that it has been read around. And some of the sisters are going to give this to their daughters and their sons without making this comment. Okay, so having thus gotten my preliminaries away, and the Arsenal thing is very important, please. I'm very serious. You know, Professor Alaro is a member of the Financial Regulators Advisory Council on Experts phrase, which actually brings me to what my remarks should be, which is, I think we all know, we all can be told about what actually happened in terms of the evolution, the growth, the challenges of Islamic finance. Some of what we have to add, those of us who are practitioners, is the actually behind the scenes issues. And that's what interests people. I'm just about to complete a book I've written on my 5 years as governor of Central Bank. It's a 20-chapter book. I've completed 17. I'm keeping the other 3 until I see who's contested elections. But on a very serious note, it is important, I think, that we also understand some of the challenges that public officers face when they're dealing with issues. And it's not about just Islamic banking. We had these challenges when we're doing cashless Nigeria, when we're doing mobile banking, when we're taking over the banks, when we're taking over AMCON. At every stage, there are always challenges. People just see AMCON, they see you take over banks, they see removed bank executives, they see how you force people onto POSs and ATMs. Not today everybody's happy. When COVID happened, if we hadn't done cashless Nigeria, I don't know how we would have survived. Look at all the unicorns we now have in Nigeria because of the mobile banking reforms. Sometimes when you are at a point when you are ahead of the population, you have to take difficult decisions. And if you do not hold firm, you could end up giving up a very, very good idea because people do not yet get it. They do not yet understand it. And I think this is what the central bank has done. The central bank has always said, look, this is good for the system. People may not understand it. Now, we'll try our best to explain. But if people choose not to explain, we can't stop because of those people. Now, Islamic banking 10 years ago, the conversation in Nigeria is very, very different 10 years down the line from what it was 10 years ago. And I also remember, even long before Islamic banking, I think if this was the organization that used to be called the Association of Muslim Professionals, I know even when I was in UBA, I had given a lecture, just at LASU, on Islamic finance. At that time, we were just talking about it and debating. The regulations were not even out. And I had not even joined First Bank. So it's great, 20 years plus later, to be with the same group of people, another generation of the same association, now talking about this same thing after 10 years. But some things that happen are interesting because, we think in Nigeria that some of these things about religious differences, they're not. What happens is that on both the Muslim and Christian side, we have people who know the truth or who don't want to know the truth, but who choose to manipulate religion for other reasons. When we issued the regulations on Islamic banking, and so this will be my book anyway, so I can talk about it. And newspapers, please, if you're going to quote me, I don't mind being controversial, but please quote what I said. No, a few days ago I was in Abuja talking to civil servants who were part of the Ike Mokede Foundation's event. And I spoke about how civil servants need to make policy for the next 40 years, 30 years, and not for the next 4 years. And I remember giving an example that the civil servants in the Ministry of Education have to think of the 7-year-old boy who is supposed to be in primary school. Not because he can vote, but because if they don't put him in school, in the next 20 years, these are the boys that will be on the street, unemployed, they will be thugs, they will be terrorists. The next thing I saw was Amy Sanusi says civil servants were responsible for Boko Haram. Simply because I said what we are facing today is a consequence of very bad decisions that were made 20 years ago. And then you had a newspaper like The Guardian, highly respected, with a story covering the same event with words put in my mouth in quotation marks. In quotation marks, not paraphrasing, in quotation marks that I never said. Which is why when Fola asked me to come here, I said, look, Fola, I'm tired of all this. Looks like everybody's waiting. All they need to know is that I was at an event. That nobody can lie about, and then they can write anything. Not that I mind, because frankly, I don't care, but at the end of the day, some very important messages get lost. Messages for the country get lost, and you end up with the sensation and the noise, which, like I said, I don't mind, I don't care, but it bothers me if the message itself gets missing. So a number of things happened, and I want to share a number of interesting anecdotes with this group. And some of my colleagues in the central bank were probably a bit junior, because at that level, the politics is handled at the level of the governor usually, and the deputy governors, and the senior directors. And the people on ground do all the work, but we have to do the politics and protect them. So I want to share a number of instances that happened on this journey in my 5 years. The first thing was when we issued the regulations. One day I was in a meeting of Committee of Governors in the central bank, and I received a text message from a highly respected cardinal who was close to me, who expressed concern that we're having a CAN meeting at the ecumenical center directly behind the central bank. And everybody was talking about how they had to issue statements and call the central bank to order, how the governor of the central bank was about to Islamize Nigeria and have Islamic banking. So he sent me a message and said, I'm disturbed by this. What would you like me to do? And I said, thank you, Your Grace. Do me a favor, can you ask the representatives of CAN, the president of CAN, if you'll allow me, I'm here with my deputy governors, you're right behind Central Bank, we'll be happy to walk across and answer any questions that you have and explain. He proposed it, they said, no, we don't want him. What is he coming to tell us? They were not ready to listen. Because they had made up their minds, even before they went into CAN meeting, that they were going to force through that statement. Now, the reason I'm saying is that even within the leadership of CAN, we had people who believed, give this man a chance. Don't just think it is Islamization, listen to him. They refused and they issued their statement. And then a few days later, I had an appointment to the president, private in the residence. And when I went there, waited for my turn, I was called in. As I was coming in, he was coming out with, lo and behold, the president of CAN. At that time, it was Pastor AbdulRazzaq. So the president said, okay, please. We shook hands. He said, okay, please, can the two of you get together? Governor, please, can you see him? He has some concerns. I said, fine. And when I went in, he had got him with a list of complaints. One was that I had sent 5,000 staff of the central bank on training on Islamic banking. At which point I told the president the CBN had only 6,000 staff. and that please, my concern is that the 1,000 who are alleged to not give training might think that they were victims. I mean, yeah, we have only 6,000 staff. The second was that I had spent $5 million training people on Islamic finance. The $5 million number referred to a grant, and it was not in cash, and it had not even been used by the Islamic Development Bank, which basically said we have set aside $5 million to fund and support training of regulators. I'm not even sure if up to now that money has been used, but that was a grant from Islamic Development Bank, which was still there with them, which was never given to the central bank. Now, I'm not blaming Pastor AbdulRazzaq, because somebody went and told him these stories, and he believed them. The only fault was that I wasn't given a chance to come and explain, and we wouldn't have had to go to the president with that. So the president said, fine, we have to manage all these things. How are you going to do that? I said, don't worry, Mr. President, I will go to Warri, and I'll go to Pastor AbdulRazzaq. I had no intention of going, by the way. I would go and see him and explain, but the president also had to be calmed down, until we did what we did. So I told him that and left. So, next thing, and these are interesting stories about how Nigeria operates. The next thing we had was, there was a Sunday like this, and churches all over the country made the subject of their sermon Islamic banking. On Monday, the papers had stories from Abeokuta, from Jos, from Enugu, of priests and pastors saying that this was part of the continuation of the attempt to Islamize Nigeria, and that the Christians will not accept it. So we then got information that this was coordinated and organized by some people in the security services. What they wanted was they had agents who were going to write reports that, because obviously the central bank had its autonomy and they knew the president would not direct the central bank to stop. So the idea was they would write security reports that would tell the president that Islamic banking was a security risk. And if the central bank governor licensed an Islamic bank, there was likely to be religious violence in Nigeria. Now we got this information, and Professor Alaro, your friend, Dr. Bashir Ali Umar, I don't know if he told you this story. So I called Dr. Bashir, and honestly, it was a masterstroke, because if SSS wrote to the president and said this is a security risk with evidence from what had been said in churches, that was the end of Islamic banking. All that the president had to do was to say, in view of this security report, please suspend this project until the situation changes, and that would have been the end. So Bashir was in a panic. What do we do? Maybe, Governor, we should slow down a bit. I said, no, this is politics, it's not religion. So what did we do of imams? And then on Friday, all over the country, the imam said, if anybody stops Islamic banking in this country will burn. Because Muslims have a right to Islamic finance, and Nigerians, blah, 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 blah. You know, the law allows it. And we got our own friends in security services and you to write your report. So it was impossible for anyone to write a report to the president, because while they were collating those reports from the churches, new reports came in from the mosques. You know? So if you stop it, problem. If you don't stop it, problem. But these are issues that happen that people don't know, you know, they happen behind the scenes, but they're very interesting because they tell you what you have to do with as a public officer. And how you sometimes have to also negotiate. And talk about Christians and non-Muslims and friendship. I'll tell you another story. A group of Christian lawyers prepared a solid case. They went into court to stop the licensing of Islamic banking, of some banks. And their basis was sound because we had issued regulations. The first part of those regulations said, given that BOFIA had allowed for non-interest banking, it defined non-interest banking as banking consistent with Sharia principles. So what the constitutional point the lawyers had was that the central bank was legislating. Because the law said you can have non-interest banks. It was the central bank that was restricting the definition of non-interest banks to Islamic banking. And to be honest, if they had gone to court, they would have won. Now, one of the lawyers in that meeting was a King's College old boy and my friend. So he called me late at night. He said, Governor, next week we are taking you to court. I said, why? He said, your Islamic banking regulation. I said, how? So we know. Why? He said, see this your regulation, see what you've done. You have no right to legislate. The law did not restrict the Islamic banking. Me, I'm not a lawyer, so I just started having palpitations. I said, okay, come. How can I defeat your case? He said, you better go quickly, issue new regulations, and make sure that you do not restrict non-interest banking to Sharia-compliant banking. And so I called Konya Jai, another Christian friend of mine, told him the situation. They worked over the weekend and they invited us for a meeting. I think on Tuesday there was a public event. I don't know if you remember, that was going to be where King Simogalu was. They had a public event that prepared. They first of all wanted to give us a chance, defeat us in the court of public opinion and then file their case. So over the weekend, we amended the regulations. And through the regulations now it says there are two types of non-interest banking. Non-interest banking carried out that's consistent with Islamic legal jurisprudence, and non-interest banking that is based on other principles. And that these regulations apply to the first category, so we're ready to give regulations for other categories. So I sent King Simogalu, I didn't go, I sent King Simogalu to the debate, and we made sure that on the day of the regulation, so when they came in and they got up and spoke, you are legislating, he said, but what are you talking about? He brought up this day newspaper. He said, these are old regulations you're talking about. Now, I'm sure they would have. He was more passionate about Islamic finance for infrastructure than any Muslim that I know. Abraham for DMO. People who, so it's not about Christians, and it's about people who were basically determined to use everything as ammunition in a political battle. Now, there were also other issues that we had. Jais itself. So obviously Jais could not raise 25 billion. And we found that they couldn't even raise 10 billion. And the banking reforms gave us an opportunity to change this one stroke fits all requirement that every bank had to have 25 billion. So we had international banks, we had national banks, we had regional banks, we had specialized institutions. And Islamic banking was a specialized institution which initially had capital of 10 billion. And they came and said they couldn't raise 10 billion. They were at 6 billion at that time. And we said, look, the only thing we can do for you is allow you to operate as a regional specialized bank, not national, in order that you start, and then when you get to 10 billion, you do national. So we actually put in the regulation. And one of the reasons we put in regional specialized banks was to facilitate that, because this was something that we had in the law since 1991. And I was determined that after 20 years, it was time we had to have that Islamic bank. We had gone this far, we needed to license. And I always believed if we licensed one, then the rest would follow. But do you know that after we did all of that, we then discovered that Jais actually had only 4 billion, and that the 2 billion was accrued interest on their account in the central bank. And our non-interest banking department said, we cannot allow you to use interest as capital for the bank. So, Professor, you talk about capital. The truth is that even the Muslims that were talking about Islamic finance, all their money was invested in First Bank and GT Bank and Zenith and all those banks. They were not ready to bring out the money. After we could not raise 5 billion. So the board of Jais called me to report my people in the CBN. They wanted help. You know, in CBN, the director of banking supervision was the governor as far as banks were concerned. I never overruled banking supervision. If you call, say, go and talk to the director of the Director of Financial Policy Regulation said, Governor, there's no way we're going to allow an Islamic bank to count interest as part of its capital. So I knew what the issues were before I went. I went to the board, and you had Mutalla, Faralubello, all of them sitting down, and they knew I like tea and sugar. They gave me a nice cup of tea with lots of sugar, you know, and then started saying that, you know, they had this problem, that they had 6 billion in the CBN, but CBN was saying 2 billion was interest. I said, yeah, but how do you justify saying you're a non-interest bank when you need interest for your capital? They needed 1 billion. And I looked at them, and frankly, none of them was ready to put in that additional 1 billion. After all the work we had done, after all this trouble, we had the regulation, we had the capital requirement, we had fought can, we had been abused, we had been insulted, we had done. They did not have the 1 billion. So I picked up the phone and I just called Aliko Dangote. And I said, Aliko, he said, I read last week that you are the richest man in Africa. He said, yes. And you are worth, I think, $12 billion. I said, but Aliko, are you not ashamed that with you, that we cannot have Islamic banking in Nigeria because of 1 billion naira, and we have you? I said, you know, Governor, I don't understand. I said, you know, if people hear that for 1 billion we can't have Islamic finance and you cannot do it, it's a problem. So he said, okay, Governor, I will give them. And that was how we got the 1.5 billion. And Aliko got to be a shareholder and have a nominated director to Jais. The point I'm making is, sometimes you make compromises, sometimes you've got to go the extra length to do it. And I was committed to it, not purely from a religious perspective. Something obviously I was passionate about. I studied Islamic law in Sudan. One of my project was on Islamic banking, so it's something I was passionate about. But it was about a regulator interested in broadening the financial system, encouraging financial inclusion, and putting Nigeria right up there with other financial centers in the world. And given the number of Muslims in Nigeria, there was no reason why Nigeria could not be the center of Islamic finance in Africa. So we were then able to license Jais. And some of the issues, I was called to the National Assembly, and you know, people complained about things. They said, hey, why do you have Sharia in there? I said, we can remove Sharia. So I said, you know the Quran? They said, yes. I said, in the entire Quran, Sharia is mentioned only once. You will not find Sharia apart from that. You can find Sharia once. So if you count Sharia as Sharia, those are the only 2 mentions. I said, it's only 1 word in the Quran. So if I remove it from CBN regulation, it's not a problem. So we changed. Everywhere they said Sharia, we said Islamic legal jurisprudence. They said they did not want. Every Islamic bank, even in the UK, has a Sharia advisory board. They said they did not want Sharia. I said, okay, call it Advisory Council of Experts. And for the regulators, call it the Financial Regulators Advisory Council of Experts, phrase. And do you know who actually produced that name, phrase? It was not me. It was Dr. Sarah Nadi. Christian deputy, she said, hey, Governor, call it phrase now, Financial Regulator Advisory. It was like in a COG meeting. That was how that name was born on that your committee. You know? And so I went to the National Assembly. I said, look, we can remove this. It's not a problem. And one of the most prominent critics was a lady in the House of Representatives from Anambra State. She got up, pointed fingers, talk. I said, thank you. When she finished, I told her that, I didn't tell her, I just told her that just by way of information, that the Islamic Development Bank had given the Ministry of Finance a loan for irrigation and agriculture. It was starting with 3 states, and the first state that has drawn is Anambra State. Because sometimes you have to go personal, because she was from Anambra, her state had borrowed Islamic Bank, Islamic Development Bank, and she was attacking me for Islamic Bank. So I said, so they all screamed and pointed at her, you mean your state is taking Islamic Bank? Sometimes you laugh and you joke, but it's ridiculous. But I think as a country we need to go through those things. And then after some time, people begin to realize that, well, it's not that bad. And by the way, at the time I was at the National Assembly, 40% of the shareholders who had bought Jai's shares were not Muslim. And I told them. So we need patience. If you choose to respond to an attack coming from somebody who claims to be speaking for Christianity, and then you speak from an Islamic position, you divide the country. He's an individual speaking for himself. Engage him. The number, it was, when I attended the first Islamic Financial Services Board meeting, there was a complaint that I had taken Nigeria to IFSB. What people didn't know was that it was actually Governor Charles Soludo who applied. It was at the very end of Charles Soludo's tenure that we were admitted into the Islamic Financial Services Board. The only reason I was the first governor to attend was that between the appointment and the meeting, Soludo had left. So when I went, people thought I had taken Nigeria into IFSB. I was just attending a meeting of an organization the central bank was already part of before I became governor. Sometimes it's a lack of communication. And when I went to NAS, I had all these papers, I had the signature, the deputy governor at that time was Reverend Tunde Lemo. And I kept saying, look, this is Reverend Lemo, this is Reverend Lemo, this is Reverend Lemo. I said, Tunde Lemo is a Christian, Chase Democrat is a Christian, Sarah Alade is a Christian. So in COG, the Muslims were a minority. For these 3 deputy governors to collaborate with me to Islamize Nigeria, they must be very bad Christians. And Tunde must be a very bad reverend. So I suppose for me, we should try as much as possible to not to allow ourselves to, sometimes some people, it's like when people say IPOP or you have some Northern Youth or OPC, they don't represent the people they claim they represent. Deal with them as individuals, and if you allow yourself to get into that fight, then you do move forward. So I'm happy that we're able to get this through, but I'm also happy that even though we just licensed 1 Islamic bank, look at what has happened now. Under a Christian governor, we now have 3 more Islamic banks, or 4 more Islamic banks. And I don't know, nobody is talking about Godwin Islamizing Nigeria. Because the central bank is an institution. You don't just come because you're a Muslim or a Christian and then turn the central bank into a religious institution. But the central bank will do what it needs to do for development, for financial inclusion, for monetary stability, for exchange rate stability, and it's not going to look at region or religion and all that. It's not a political party. So I'll just make a few comments on some of the issues that came out of the paper that I would like to share. The first is about jurisprudence. I think, Professor Alaro, the responsibility that you have, you and Dr. Bashir and others in phrase, and one of the reasons we chose Sheikh Sharif Ibrahim Saleh to chair phrase is that Sharif Saleh is actually the Grand Mufti of Jamaat Nasrul Islam. And the idea was to give credibility to whatever you do. Now, part of the challenge you have is you need to engage your fellow jurists. And notice the challenge we have in the interpretation of Islamic law in modernity. It's not just about the law of contracts. We have these issues around the law of marriage, for example. You have this whole debate over, can you fix a minimum age of marriage for boys and girls in Islam? What is the position on domestic violence? Can a husband beat his wife or not? What are the requirements for giving a wife mut'ah in the event of divorce? What are the rights of children in the family? These are issues that are being debated and interrogated in the Muslim world. How do you interpret Islamic law in a modern society? Now, new issues come up. You have new contractual arrangements that never existed at the time of the Prophet. And to actually arrive at a position, you need to understand both the law and the product itself. And one of the reasons I think Islamic finance went far was many of the jurists of the Hanafi school and the Shafi'i school and the Hanbali school ended up relying on the Maliki concept of al-Masalih al-Mursala. Ended up accepting that where the Sharia does not explicitly prohibit something, if there is maslaha in it, then it is Islamic. And that opened the scope for accepting a number of things that were ordered without initially people didn't want to accept. And one of the weaknesses in jurisprudence in Nigeria is a lack of depth in usul al-fiqh, a lack of depth in al-qawaid. And without usul and qawaid, you cannot make sound rulings for new questions that arise. Okay? So, and I would urge you to look at that even when you regulate Islamic banks. So one of the issues you've talked about is liquidity and the lack of liquidity instruments. Now the question is, if you need to have liquidity instruments that are interest bearing, would that make the bank un-Islamic? And why I ask this is, the qaida in fiqh, مَا لَا يُحْصَلُ كُلُّهُ لَا يُتْرَكُ جَمِيعُهُ. If you cannot get something 100%, you do not lose it 100%. So if you cannot get a 100% Islamic bank, if you have a bank that is 90% Islamic, should you allow it to run until you can fix the other 10%? These are, I think, phrased as you begin to look at jurisprudence. These are questions you need to ask. And I'll give you an example with Imam bin Layla of United Arab Emirates, and I'm sure you've read the book Sinatul Fatwa wa Fiqh al-Aqliyat. One of the sections, one of the interesting fatwas he gave was to Muslims in Europe. Sorry, Chairman, am I taking too much time? was to Muslims in Europe, who were asking about whether they can pay interest on mortgages. And I remember he made a distinction between taking interest and paying interest, where he said riba was initially prohibited. What was prohibited was the taking of interest. لا تأكلوا الربا أضعافا مضاعفة فبظلم من الذين هادوا حرمنا عليهم طيبات أحلت لهم عن سبيل الله كثيرا وبأكلهم الربا وغنوا عنه. So it is about taking, and giving was only prohibited because it was a wasila, it was a means to the taking of riba. Therefore, he who is compelled to give is not the same as he who insists that you must give him when he's lending. And he therefore felt that what was haram in itself is a stronger tahrim than that which is haram as a wasila, and that was the basis on which he allowed them to pay interest on mortgages. And he got the words of Ibn Abdul Salam, where if it is impossible to carry out economic activity without riba, then haja becomes darura and so on. So I just think for you in phrase, one of the greatest challenges is how do you increase the knowledge of usul al-fiqh and qawaid among traditional scholars, so that they're then able to think with you. And once, I know my experience, I did that in Kano with the family law. Once you actually get them and convince them, they become your greatest ambassadors among the people. Three minor points. You've talked about a tribunal. I don't think it's where you should start. We still don't have a legislation of contracts. There's nothing that stops you. There's nothing that stops the central bank and non-interest banking department from working with jurists with you and with lawyers to draft a law of contract for Islamic finance and have that passed by the legislature. Once you have that law, the courts will apply that law. If the judge needs an expert in Islamic law to advise, he will bring a friend of the court to come and give an opinion. I don't think we need special tribunals. And once you begin to ask for special tribunals for Islamic banking, you will have the same battle we had on licensing Islamic bank again. And you'll have constitutional issues. But if you just have a law of contract underlying non-interest banking transactions, and you have that passed by state or federal legislation, you will have that implemented in the court of law. So I think you have to continue moving from regulation to legislation, and then have the normal courts. As much as possible, try not to disrupt the process. Find out how you can, without changing the process that we have, achieve your objectives. You talked about government giving funds of Hajj for Islamic banks. But why do Islamic banks need to wait for government Hajj funds? After all, in Malaysia, the banks started with the Tabung Hajj. They set up a fund where Muslims themselves were saving towards Hajj, and that saving was being invested. So why do you want the government? Why don't the banks set up their own Tabung Hajj? Why don't you get Muslims to start saving? You plan to go for Hajj in the next 5 years, you start putting money aside, and they invest it for you until you get to a certain level, and then you go for Hajj. So I would rather have you encourage the banks to think outside the box, to raise their money from the private sector, than to look towards government. Anything again that requires the government to give support to Islamic banks, separate. Once you start having that, the central bank itself will have a problem. You cannot justify that. So we need to avoid that. Finally, it's about the prospects of this industry. Globally, we're having a convergence between Islamic banking, ethical funds that are non-Islamic, because apart from the interest element, many of the things you talk about, tobacco, gambling, all that, they're covered by ethical funds. And now we have green funds, green finance, climate change, that's where the world is going. And honestly, what I would like to see with our Islamic banks in Nigeria is that they take the lead on these questions of climate change, green finance, ethical finance, sustainability, because there are many forms of finance that maybe they don't have interest, but they are not necessarily. I mean, money laundering is un-Islamic. It's un-Islamic. If anybody takes money from corruption and puts it in the bank, it's un-Islamic, because Allah says, "La ta'kulu amwalakum bainakum bil batil." So this is about consuming the wealth of. No, he's not giving me time because I came all the way from the UK for this show, and this man came only from Ilorin, and you are. So, but but I had said finally, and I thought I would share these because I thought it's extremely important. Share my own views and also share the comments around the professor. So I hope that I have been able to contribute something to this discourse, and I hope the day will end happily with the victory of Arsenal and Manchester City. And I can say that your prayers have worked. Yeah. If Arsenal loses, you people better interrogate your relationship with God. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.